What's up, gamers? And today we're talking about the best build for our speed demon queen Aglaea here. She is our first remembrance signature unit we've gotten in the game thus far, and she has a lot of complexity to her kit. She also has a lot of depth to her kit as well, and no, we're not fully talking about those bad boys she has right there. And she just works kind of differently to every other character other than maybe Remembrance MC, because she does summon a Memo Sprite in. So that's what we're going to get into first, how she actually works, and then we're going to get into her complex build after that, because not gonna lie guys, she's kind of hard to build. So make sure you stick around for the whole video to get all the information you need. Let's go ahead and hop into what she can do first, and then we'll talk about what her Memo Sprite does after that. So first of all guys, her skill moves works just like Remembrance MC's skill move, because this will be summoning her Memo Sprite onto the field. This will also be recovering some of their HP as well if you use this if they're already summoned on the field, but this is how you can get the initial summon of the Memo Sprite out. This is not the only way to get the Memo Sprite though guys. You can actually use the ultimate as well, and the ultimate will bring the Memo Sprite or summon the Memo Sprite back to the field. All this actually does make her quite SP efficient, because you don't necessarily have to use the skill every single turn. Basically what you're doing guys is you're using the skill one time, and then you're going to be directing the enemy's attack with her basic attack. What her basic attack does guys is target one enemy and put the seam stitch on that one enemy, and what that does is whenever the Memo Sprite comes to attack, because the Memo Sprite will just do an automatic attack on the enemy, whoever has a seam stitch on them, that's the enemy they will be attacking. They'll be hitting that one main target and then hitting adjacent enemies with that as well. This kind of works how Topaz Noombi works. By deploying Proof of Dead on one target, Noombi will keep attacking that one target. Same thing kind of works here, and then you can kind of change this up every single turn. The talent's also playing a role into what stats the Memo Sprite's actually getting, because this will be deriving its speed and HP off of a portion of what Aglaea's HP and speed is, so you want to make sure you're building into both of those two things there. And all of her kit actually is going to be playing into what the ultimate move is going to be doing guys, because what this does is first of all summon the Memo Sprite like we mentioned before, but secondly guys, if the Memo Sprite's already on the field, you're going to be restoring it some HP to max. On top of this guys, you'll be entering her Supreme Stance, which basically allows her to do an enhanced basic attack. We'll talk more about that after this when we actually talk about the Memo Sprite. And whenever she's in the Supreme Stance, she's actually going to be getting a speed boost from the Memo Sprite's talent. This is going to be increasing her own speed by 15%, and then also giving you a countdown as well, and whenever this countdown ends, your Memo Sprite will be exploding. It'll be dying. So yeah, the Memo Sprite combust, okay guys? It's actually not too bad when the Memo Sprite combusts. This basically makes her kind of balance in a way, because you need to use a skill point to upkeep it, right? So this will basically make you have to use another skill point again to bring that Memo Sprite back out. But not only this guys, you're also going to be getting extra energy back from the Memo Sprite. On top of this guys, whenever it's summoned, it can take immediate action, so this means you use the skill to bring it out. It is coming the next turn to do an attack and hit the enemy. And then the final talent that this does guys is whenever you're attacking the enemy with Seam Stitch, which it should be attacking regardless, you'll be giving the Memo Sprite an increase of 55 speed. This can stack up to 6 times. So that's an additional 330 speed you're giving the Memo Sprite at max stack, and this is going to be playing a very integral role into what the enhanced basic attack does, because one of the additional abilities for Aglaea here is actually going to be whenever she's in the Supreme Stance, you'll be increasing her attack and your Memo Sprite's attack by an amount equal to 720% of Aglaea's speed and then 360% of Garment Maker speed. So you do want to be investing a lot of speed. These multipliers are super high. This is attack though, just keep that in mind. So that your attack stat's going to be really high, so you ultimately want to be focusing on not just speed here, but also crit rate, crit damage as well, because attack's one of the lowest scaling things on your damage multiplier. So while this is good, and while this is a lot of attack, and while this will boost your damage a lot, this is not the only thing you should focus on. I just want to mention that because they do give themselves a lot of speed, but we'll talk more about stats and builds later on in the video. Because the final thing we need to touch on her kit here guys is actually her enhanced basic attack, and what this is going to be doing is launching a joint attack. Now the reason why joint attack is special here guys is because it basically acts independent of each other, right? So they both attack at the same time, but you get an attack from each one of the units here. So an attack from Aglaea, and then also an attack from her Memo Sprite as well. They're both independent actions within the same action. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's the best way that I can explain it to you guys. Basically what this does guys is you target one main enemy here and then also hit adjacent enemies as well, but you'll be getting a fuck ton of damage from this, right? Because not only are you getting the increased attack from both Aglaea and your Memo Sprite, they're both doing just massive damage on the enemy with their own like attacks on the enemy at the same time. So it's just basically a 2-for-1 special here to do absolutely massive amounts of damage. This is where the majority of your damage comes from, kind of like the Herda in a way, where her main stick of damage is using her enhanced skill attack. The main chunk of her damage is coming from this enhanced basic attack. And with all of that being said, I think we can kind of talk about now the best teams she can be running, because this obviously suggests what kind of teams you would want to run her in, because she's kind of like structured in a way to really focus on one stat, and that's really attack and speed. So you ultimately want to be giving her a lot of other things as well, and considering she technically has 2 people that can do pretty decent DPS on the team, you could run her in a hyper carry team. I think her best in slot team is going to be a hyper carry team actually, and that's going to be a team with her, Sunday, Robin, and Hua Hua or Gallagher running Quid Pro Quo, so you can give some extra energy back as well. But but this is going to be her best team because first of all, we have the advanced action 4, we have all of those juicy buffs coming in from Robin, and then we also have all those juicy buffs coming in from Sunday as well, which also is going to be summoning that Memo Sprite up back to the front. This is where Sunday's really going to start to shine at, is when we start getting these remembrance units added into the game that start doing massive amounts of damage, right? Because he's automatically bringing that Memo Sprite up back to the front with Aglaea whenever he advances her action forward, on top of those crit buffs he's also giving to her as well. So this is going to be hands down her best in slot team. Other alternatives here to this hyper carry-esque team here would obviously be like a remembrance MC. I think they could work really nice here. You could also run someone like a Ting Yun on this team as well, so we're able to get to her enhanced basic attack even faster. And honestly, she has some pretty decent free-to-play options as well. Now, I don't know technically how effective she'll be with these free-to-play options, because if we take the Pride Wins tier list for anything, for example here, these units are ranked pretty low, and I really don't know how it's going to affect her in the long run, just because their buffs aren't the best buffs in the world. But nonetheless, you could run an Asta here for an extra attack buff and an extra speed buff here, and you could also run Hanya as well. That's also going to be giving you an attack buff and a speed buff focused on Aglaea herself. So these two things could be pretty decent when you run this on her. So don't want to throw that out of the equation completely, because I do think these are some options you can run, but I kind of want to pivot now to a different team you could run. We've been talking about hyper carry teams here. Genuinely, I think she can run on one for right now anyways, dual DPS team. I did test this out, and it seemed to work pretty well in terms of like getting stacks up for Fei Zhao and stuff like that. But a team with Fei Zhao, yes guys, Fei Zhao plays off of the amount of actions you take, and with having these Memo Sprites on the field, they obviously are going to be taking a secondary action. So this is basically another follow-up unit on the team, right? So the more actions you're taking with the Memo Sprite and Aglaea here, the more you're getting the stacks up for Fei Zhao as well. Fei Zhao can act more of like a sub DPS, or like a very, very high damaging sub DPS in this place here, because we already know Fei Zhao doesn't run off of energy. She doesn't rely on energy. You're already going to be pretty SP efficient in my opinion, because you're not really using the skill that much on Aglaea. But so you're going to be mainly using skills on her as well to get that ultimate charge back up with the amount of actions you're taking, and just with the sheer actions you're taking overall, you're going to be attacking a lot more frequently, so the ult's up a lot more, so you're doing a lot more damage. And honestly, this worked pretty well for me. Genuinely though, what I would recommend on this dual DPS team is to have AoE buffers. So Robin, I think Ruan Mei could probably work here as well. If you didn't want to run this, I mean, I think Remembrance MC can still work here, because they do somewhat give team-wide buffs, and you can really focus on giving that damage to your Aglaea here. And as far as like sustains go here, Hua Hua obviously work here because you give energy. Doesn't really help Fei Zhao as much, but Lingsha also works here. Aventurine can also work here. Fu Shuang can even work here for extra crit rate, because trust me guys, the build here is kind of hard and maybe even ridiculous to a certain point to get. So we'll talk about that after we talk about the light cones here, which is what we're going to talk about now, because that's all I have to say about teams, guys. I think she has the potential to be ran a lot more teams in the future, especially when we get more of these action-based DPS added to the game, like Fei Zhao. I think she can pair up really nicely with those type of characters in dual DPS scenarios. Now let's go ahead and talk about the best in slot light cones you can use for her. Now obviously guys, her best in slot light cone here is going to be her signature light cone. Other options you can run for her though, honestly guys, I think we might be getting a pretty decent option here in the near future. And when I mean near future, I mean maybe patch 3.1, but we can't talk about that right now. So maybe the free-to-play players will be looking to invest in this in the future, so can't go into that one too much. But I do think that'll probably be the second best in slot light cone that you can get for. As far as the third best in slot light cone, it's going to be Sweat Now Cry Less. Now what Sweat Now Cry Less is going to do, guys, is basically increase her crit rate by 12%. But this is a battle pass light cone, so another like pay to win type thing, like you have to pay to get this light cone, so the only way you can get it. But it does give you something pretty nice for her, and that's actually increased crit rate, guys. Crit rate with her is actually pretty hard to get, or I should say, like, she gives some in her kit to herself, but outside of that, she doesn't really have much of a way to get crit rate, and crit rate is going to be something that is very important to get under. Crit rate and crit damage, I should say, but crit rate I have more importance on than crit damage, because she has a lot of different teammates that can give her crit damage, and not as many that give her crit rate, but this is going to be giving her 12% increased crit rate. But on top of this, guys, whenever the wearer's Memo Sprites on the field, it's going to be increasing the damage dealt by that wearer and their Memo Sprite by 24%, so this is a damage increase, and also a free crit rate buff as well, so just all around a super nice light cone for her. And the final one I can recommend to you guys is something that's going to be coming out whenever she gets released on her light cone banner, which is called Genius's Greetings. This is a 4-star Remembrance light cone, but basically what this is going to be doing is increasing the wearer's attack. On top of this, guys, if the user uses an ultimate move, it's going to be increasing their damage and the Memo Sprite's basic attack damage by 20% for 3 turns. So this means her enhanced basic attack she does, this is going to be increased. And you got to remember, guys, the damage is independent on each one of these characters, so that's a 20% damage buff for her and a 20% damage buff for the Memo Sprite as well. So it's just a all-around really good like damage buff. You can think of it like a 40% damage buff, if you will, right? So that's the best way I can describe it. Those are the best in slot light cones you can use. Like I said though, 3.1 has a better light cone option for you free-to-play players out there if you didn't want to get any of these light cones, or maybe you just didn't have the currency to get them. So 3.1 probably going to be your best option if that's the case. Maybe. right? Surely. I don't know, maybe. Now let's get into the nitty gritty here. Her best in slot relic sets, relic stats, and everything like that. But before we get into that, guys, if you've made it to this part of the video, or maybe you just got scammed, please hit that subscribe button, because if you don't, little Herta here will kudu on you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button now, and so you can get all this cool Honkai Star shit content. You can get some Copium content as well, and maybe some Zenless Zone Zero content if you're into that. Anyways, guys, let's go ahead and talk about her best in slot 4-piece relic set now, which is honestly, guys, the new set they added into the game. Who would have fucking thought? So what that set's gonna be doing, guys, is a 2-piece increasing her attack percentage, which is it's okay, right? The attack increase is I kind of wish it was another stat. But outside of that, though, on the 4-piece, whenever a Memo Sprite's on the field, you're going to be increasing the wearer's speed by 6%. And then on top of this, whenever the Memo Sprite attacks, you're going to be increasing the wearer's Memo Sprite's crit damage by 30% for 2 turns. So this is a free crit damage buff as well. So like I said before, it's that other light cone, the BP light cone, getting the extra crit rate, you get some free crit damage here. All around works pretty nice. But if you didn't want to get this set, you probably could run a 2-piece speed, 2-piece speed. Now, it's not going to be as good as this set right here by any means, but it will be giving you additional speed, which everything in her kit, or a lot of her damage, does scale off of speed. So if you had like decent substats on a 2-piece speed set, then you could run that as well. And just slightly touching on another 2-piece that you could run, you could probably run a 2-piece Scholar Lost in Year Edition as well, along with a 2-piece speed set, because the extra crit rate there will be pretty nice. These are just some like other sets, if you didn't have the full set just yet, that you could run if you're really gung-ho and running a set and you needed some additional crit rate. That could be another option for you. But that's really all I have to say about the 4-piece sets. Now let's go ahead and talk about those best in slot planner sets. And the best in slot planner set for her, guys, is going to be the new Wonderous Banana Amusement Park. Why? Because this gives her a fuck ton of increased crit damage, guys. Basically, this is going to be giving you a 48% increase to her crit damage, so all around just super good here. Like, I don't know what else to say for you guys. This is going to be her best in slot planner set. Outside of this set, though, guys, you could run a 2-piece Runelin Arena here, because Runelin Arena is going to be giving you an increase of 8% crit rate, which she needs a lot of, like we mentioned before. But on top of that, though, guys, it's going to be giving you increased damage to your basic attack and skill attack. Now, that is where the majority of her damage is coming from, is that basic attack. So this will be giving that 20% increase there too, so that's also going to be a pretty decent set to run. And one more set I just want to briefly mention is the Glamoth set, because she scales off of speed. She already has a lot of speed, so this Glamoth set is actually really easy to proc off with her. This just gives her an overall 18% just overall damage across the board, right? But I think Runelin's going to serve you better than Glamoth. I just want to give you another option you could run there. Now let's go ahead and hop into her main and substats, guys. For the boots, you're going to be wanting to run speed. It's hand down speed's the best thing you can do here. For the body, going to be crit rate or crit damage. Crit rate preferred. You want to get at least like 75 to 80% crit right here. That would be the bare minimum that I would recommend. On the rope, that's going to be attack percentage or energy regeneration rate. Personally, I'll probably run energy regeneration rate, but it really just depends on the scenario that you're in. I like running ERR because I just like getting energy faster. You do probably, honestly, you probably get a damage drop off in a lot of situations. Attack is probably preferred here, but I'm just copium and dumb, and I just think in my brain that I'm getting faster all the time, but I'm actually not. But ERR, it could be viable here as well. Just want to point that out. And finally, for the orb is going to be lightning damage there, and this is going to be all the stats you're going to need for her main stats. But now let's go ahead and talk about those substats, because the one most important stat you need to get on her crit rate, guys. I know speed is super heavily implied in this, and like you do want speed, but overall crit rate is not something you get much of, and you really do want to be building this up. Like I said before, 75 to 80% was what I would recommend bare minimum for her, and then going on to crit damage, at least 140% here. Depending on the team you're running her on, you're probably giving her a lot of crit damage regardless. Like if you have a team with Sunday and Robin, you get a lot of free crit damage there, so I mean, like that kind of already helps you with that field. And depending on what sustain you're running, you could maybe get free crit damage there as well. So it really just depends on who the team is you have set up, but ultimately, you're probably giving yourself a lot of crit damage, so crit rate is more important than crit damage in this scenario. And then for speed, I would recommend at least 134 here, because she does give herself a lot of free speed within her kit itself, especially the Memo Sprite. Memo Sprite just gives so much speed to her, so I would recommend getting to at least 134 here, and then that's kind of where you want to be. And then obviously, attack percent is going to be the last thing here. She gives herself a lot of attack percentage, so you really don't need to focus that much on it, but it could be viable to get there as well. That's really all that I have to say in today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw, then please leave a subscribe to the channel. I would much so appreciate that. And honestly, guys, we're trying to push 10k subs. We're trying to push 10k subs. Like that's a dream of mine, to get 10,000 subscribers. I know I say a lot of copium shit sometimes on my fucking off fucking build guide topics. But, hey, it's just the name of the game, buddy. Rage bait and gooner bait and whatever you can do, you know. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. See you later. Bye.